Among all the top tiers in One Piece, there's only a select few that are regarded by a World's Strongest title. Mihawk holds the title of the Strongest Swordsman, Whitebeard held the title of the Strongest Man, and Kaido was known as the strongest creature in the world. Despite challenging the Marines and the Emperors, suffering over 1,000 tortures and facing multiple types of executions, no one could kill Kaido, not even himself. That powerful introduction alone made it very clear what type of monster Kaido is supposed to be viewed as. He even rose up to become one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea as he earned the respect of ferocious pirates through his individual strength alone. Due to all this, Kaido garnered a bounty of 4.611 billion, which is the highest known bounty in the series behind Whitebeard and Roger. So we'll be covering his feats and narrative to figure out whether or not his notoriety truly translates to what his strength is propped up to be. But before we delve into it though, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy content like this, and as always, your support is much appreciated. When Kaido is called the world's strongest creature, what does it actually mean? The first time this title was mentioned was by Law in Punk Hazard, and Nami's reaction to this title was to question if Kaido was even human. Typically, people don't refer to other humans as creatures unless it's intended to be derogatory. Kaido doesn't appear to be human, however appearances in One Piece can be deceiving. Moria is a good example of someone you'd think isn't human, but is actually confirmed to be human in his Vivid card entry. Kaido on the other hand is referred to as an ogre or an oni, and even his daughter Yamato is called the Oni Princess. So for interpretation A, Kaido's title could be referring to creatures that aren't human and that he is the strongest one. Another way this title can be interpreted is that Kaido is the most powerful being in the world, and that's actually an opinion people in the world also share. For instance, Zoro refers to Kaido as the so-called world's strongest, and to a lesser degree, Killer calls Kaido the strongest pirate in the world. In fact, the title of the chapter Killer says that in is literally called Island of the Strongest. Although this may seem like a valid interpretation on the surface, there are a couple of reasons why it's inconsistent. The first being that if Kaido's title implies he was the strongest fighter, then it would directly contradict Whitebeard's title as the strongest man. Kaido and Whitebeard's titles existed at the same time, so it can't mean the same thing. Kaido is also considered to be a man, so he would fall under Whitebeard's title as well. Some may bring up Skull's statement in the Ace novel about Whitebeard's strongest pirate title referring to his career as a pirate rather than his individual power. However, this is irrelevant, as A, this is just Skull's opinion, and B, Whitebeard has another title that's given by the narrator's box as the world's strongest man. I do want to make it clear that the purpose of this point isn't to say that old Whitebeard was stronger than Kaido, but rather their titles just don't mean the same thing. This is further supported in One Piece magazine 14, which states that Kaido is the strongest creature in history. If the strongest creature is to suggest the strongest fighter, then this magazine statement would be suggesting that Kaido is the strongest of all time. We all know this just isn't true, and Kaido pretty much admits inferiority to Roger as well by praising his haki that he believes conquered the seas. This leaves us with interpretation C, which is what I subscribe to, and that Kaido's title simply refers to his seemingly unkillable nature, which makes sense given the following context. For starters, the chapter title of Kaido's introduction is literally called Suicide. The narrator talks about despite his tortures, execution attempts, and battles with the Emperors and Marines, no one could kill him. When Kaido tried to take his own life by falling off a sky island 10,000 feet in the air, he still couldn't die. Given his unkillable nature, it makes sense why people would bet on Kaido in a one-on-one, because why would you bet against someone who seemingly can't die? All this is further supported in Kaido's Vivid card entry, which states that it's due to his unparalleled vitality that no one could kill him, rather than his overwhelming fighting power. To even damage Kaido, one must use abilities or techniques that can bypass his durability, as it's almost impossible to damage him through conventional means. This seems to be the basis of Kaido's invincible stature, as he's not expected to be damaged, so when he is, there's always a shocked reaction from those nearby. Kaido's invincible image was shattered to the readers when Oden scarred him, as it was the first time that Kaido was made to look truly invincible. This isn't to discredit Kaido's title, however the general populace of the One Piece world don't know the full story about Kaido when they form their opinions about him. Nonetheless, Kaido's feats and portrayal is still among the best in the story, and he's an exceptional fighter, being able to use all 3 types of Haki, all at the advanced level. Those that can wield the advanced level of Conqueror's Haki are said to be among the very strongest, which is to be expected for Kaido. He's also the wielder of the mythical fish fruit model Azuri Dragon, which not only gives Kaido the ability to become a dragon, but to also control flames, wind, and lightning. We first get a glimpse of Kaido's power in Act 1 of Wano when he one-shot Gear 4 Luffy, who had surpassed Katakuri. Despite Luffy not having access to his future sight due to losing his calmness over the situation, Kaido's power proved far too much for his durability and anyone else on this caliber. Moving on to the raid of Onigashima, Kaido fought and soloed the Scabbards with very low difficulty. Although the Scabbards were able to damage Kaido, each of the attacks were considered shallow, which also includes the Paradise Totsuka, which was an attack done by 4 of the strongest Scabbards. The Scabbards' strength vary in power, with the stronger ones scaling either relative or stronger than Jack, and the weaker ones at best being relative to the Flying Six. After defeating the Scabbards, Kaido would fight alongside Big Mom to face off against the 5 strongest Supernova. Luffy had progressed greatly since Act 1, and the others were somewhat comparable, with Killer being a step behind the main 4. Despite being stronger than the Scabbards and impressing Kaido more, the Supernova were only dealing shallow damage as well. It's not until Zoro scarred Kaido with Ashura and Luffy awakened Advanced Conqueror's Haki that Kaido was dealt lasting damage. It's also only after Zoro hit Kaido with his Ashura technique that Kaido showed any signs of fatigue, which puts into perspective the impact of all the attacks Kaido has taken up until this point. This goes to show the level of power that's required to truly harm Kaido, and even then his top tier endurance makes him tough enough to continue taking these levels of attacks. Kaido would then fight and defeat Luffy off screen in a one-on-one whose use of Conqueror's Coating was crude and clumsy. Yamato then stepped up to hold off Kaido until Luffy returned, and she was able to wear down Kaido enough that the stability of his flame clouds that were holding up Onigashima started to weaken. Whether or not the flame clouds are a passive ability that doesn't hinder Kaido like Doflamingo's birdcage is up for debate. All I'll say is that Kaido never makes note of the flame clouds making it more difficult for him to fight, but I digress. Luffy returns to the fight after being well fed, which restores his power, and has a Conqueror's clash with Kaido that splits the sky. This was the sign that Luffy had mastered Conqueror's Coating, and Kaido drinks sake as a token that he's accepted Luffy's strength. When Kaido becomes drunk, he uses a fighting style called Drunken Dragon Bagua. Some seem to think that the sake itself gives Kaido an amp due to Luffy noting that his Haki grew stronger. However, the problem with this line of reasoning is that it would suggest that Kaido wasn't at full power during his fight versus Gear 5, as by that point Kaido had sobered up. A more consistent interpretation would be that Kaido just started trying harder over the course of the fight, and the Drunk Dragon Bagua is just a variation of his fighting style rather than an amp like Rock Lee's drunken style from Naruto. This is consistent with how Kaido fought during the raid by only using what he deems as necessary power for his opponent. Anyways, Drunk Kaido fought toe-to-toe with Gear's 2nd and 3rd Luffy, who should scale above Yamato based on his performance in this fight. However, Kaido will show just how much he's been holding back this entire raid when he fights Gear 4, which should be several times stronger and faster than his previous gears. Despite struggling to keep up with Snake Man's speed at first, as soon as Kaido turned on his future sight, everything changed. Kaido was able to easily overwhelm Gear 4, endure the over Kongan, almost knock out Luffy with the Thunder Bellow Bagua, and finally kill Luffy, albeit with Guanaka's interference. Some may say the result could have been different if it wasn't for Guanaka's interference, but this just isn't true. Kaido had already endured and bounced back from Luffy's over Kongan, however Luffy was almost knocked out by the Thunder Bellow Bagua, so the result wouldn't have changed. It's not until Luffy awakened his fruit and became the sun god Nika that someone could fight Kaido to his level during the raid. The first half of the Gear 5 fight was Luffy mainly overwhelming Kaido with abilities that you'd see from a cartoon. However, Kaido was able to turn things around towards the end by blitzing and overwhelming Luffy a couple of times. Kaido also claims during the fight that there's no one in the world who can defeat him, which is quite the lofty claim, but isn't far from his public perception. Obviously Kaido hasn't seen or fought every top tier to know he can't be beat, but he has seen and even had a skirmish with red hair Shanks. Shanks is so strong that he was able to one-shot Kid, who has a bounty of 3 billion despite being helped by Killer. Kaido even respects Shanks' strength so much that he's part of the representation of Luffy's potential alongside kings of their era and Kozuki Oden. Speaking of Oden, Kaido was able to beat him due to the old hag impersonating Momonosuke, which nerfed Oden considerably. To have no doubt is true strength, and Oden was distracted and shaken up by Momo seemingly being held hostage, which is why he was defeated by a regular base Kaido attack. Some may say that this was a younger Kaido, however he was 39 at the time and nothing suggests that he wasn't in his prime, especially considering that he had the reputation of being invincible at that time, and even 8 years earlier than that he was considered to be the embodiment of might. However, despite Kaido's feats and his current portrayal, Oda has definitely written things in a way where this can be doubted. Firstly, there's no objective statement that Kaido is actually the strongest, unlike Whitebeard and Mihawk who have their own respective title boxes. The fact that Kaido is only said to be or known as the strongest leaves room for doubt because public opinion isn't infallible. Even Oda himself, when he's talking about Kaido in the SPS, calls him the so-called strongest or that he's supposedly the strongest, which is very questionable if it was truly Oda's intent for him to be the strongest at the time. It could be the case that Kaido is the strongest known figure and someone like Emu is being reserved, but that's merely conjecture. It could also mean that Oda is leaving himself enough wiggle room if the likes of Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon, Akainu, etc. are somehow shown to be stronger than him in the future. Some may try to argue that Kaido is on Roger and Prime Whitebeard's level because Whitebeard didn't go to Wano to avenge Oden. However, we know the reason why he didn't go was due to the amount of innocent casualties there would be if they had a war in Wano. So this had nothing to do with the strength of Whitebeard and Kaido, but had everything to do with the circumstances. Ultimately, Luffy and Kaido's fight was determined by the haki of their ultimate techniques. For Luffy, it's the Batarang gun, and for Kaido, it's the Rising Dragon Flame Bago. Kaido claimed that haki is what transcends all, and the final clash was stated to be a clash of their haki, meaning the stronger haki would prevail. As we all know, Luffy won the clash, which means that his haki transcends Kaido and proves that he's the stronger conqueror. In Kaido's final moments of consciousness, he recalls back to when he conceded to Joy Boy as the only person that could beat him, and Luffy became Joy Boy when he awakened his fruit. Luffy vs Kaido is a contentious subject for obvious reasons, but just for the sake of argument, if Luffy truly surpassed Kaido and Kaido was truly the strongest before his defeat, do you think Oda truly intends for Luffy to already be the strongest going into the final saga? If your answer to that is no, then was Kaido really the strongest all that time? Like I said, this is a contentious subject, but that's some food for thought. All in all, Kaido's almost built to be the perfect fighter. He's a wielder of a mythical Zoan, unparalleled durability, top tier endurance, and capable of using every type of haki. He's the last man since Whitebeard who was considered to be the strongest in the world, and it took a literal deity of the verse to put an end to him. That's all for this topic, so if you enjoyed, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. I've been the one and only Zage, and until next time.